Hi folks, in this video I'm just going to try to detail what I'm currently using for my preferred setup. Is a brushed micro FPV racer. See, I have an Efficiency X 120 size frame using the wide arm version here. The standard frame will save you about a gram, but it's not quite as durable. So for just kind of recreational racing or fast flying around the house, I kind of stick with the wide arm version. Have you know, the wide arm motor mounts and the 8.5mm motors, the 8.5 by 20, 1500 kV, and I'm using the CG 022 propellers and a Scisky or Scisky flight controller, however you want to pronounce it. And I have one of the micro FPV camera transmitter combos here. This one happens to be a Hyperion. There's a few different models that are you know, pretty much work identical to this one. And then I'm also using the roll bar. So I'm going to go ahead and pull some parts out here and kind of run through how all this goes together, and then hopefully do a demo flight with a little FPV footage recorded. Okay, with all the parts laid out here, I'm going to try to get through this build as quickly as possible. Start by taking the motors out and installing them right into the motor mounts. Just take them apart. If there's any residual powder in them, it'll be cleaned out quickly here. I'm just going to use a razor knife for this. Just start with the top of the motors first and press right into the mount. Just push them until they're flush. I'm going to go ahead and do that with all four. Okay, now that all the motors are installed into the mounts, I'm going to get the main frame out of the package here and go ahead and install the mounts right onto the frame. Should be a nice press fit. Where the holes are the closest together are going to be at the front and the back of the frame. So I'm going to have a, see, clockwise. I'm going to be using the Scisky board. So I'll have a clockwise up here in the front left. Just pushes on. And counterclockwise here. Okay, now that the motors and mounts are installed into the main frame, I'm going to go ahead and get the roll bar ready for installation. I'm just going to take the roll bar and start bending it in the center. Try and work it around to an even U roll bar shape here. Don't want it all bending in one spot. Once it comes around, just going to take the included screw, go through, screw the roll bar right onto it. Like a hex wrench here. Get reasonably tight. The other screw through, and bend the roll bar around. And just hold it in position. Thread the screw in. Okay, now that the roll bar is installed, I'm going to go ahead and put the flight controller on. Use some of the foam pad here that was included with the frame. I like to avoid these taller components on the board. Just kind of cut a notch out to miss them. Okay, now with the flight controller installed, pull the micro rubber bands out here. They're going to be used to help hold these motor wires in place. Just stretch it right over the motor, and they'll help keep the wires right tight to the arm. Okay, now at this point, you'll notice I don't have any plugs on the flight controller here. I'm going to be actually going ahead and trimming these wires, soldering them to the flight controller. But as I showed earlier, with the demonstration build, this is completely possible even if you have motor plugs installed. So I'm just going to go ahead and solder this one up. Okay, now that the motors are all connected up to the flight controller, go ahead, I have a rubber band here. I'm just going to double up, wrap around everything here, just to help hold that flight controller in place. That'll also help aid in holding the battery to the frame. Just going to give that a twist, come back over everything. Just want to make sure that antenna doesn't get stuck under there. That'll really help hold the flight controller in place. I happen to have a few loom bands here as well. I'll take one and loop it through here, then back through itself. So that acts as just a handle to pull that out, so I can help get that pulled down so that the battery can get slipped through there. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and install the camera here. I'm going to be using some loom bands. In other builds I've also used hot glue to just hot glue the antenna here. And in the case of when I was using the Cricket cam on this build, which actually ran into a fence a few times and ended up breaking the roll bar. But anyway, you can see I had the Cricket cam here, which has a case on it. This also has a different power connector. So for some folks that may that aren't going to be planning on soldering it, might work out a little bit better. Then I just hot glued it on each side, and I think I had a loom band up here before it broke. But anyway, back to the main build here. I'm going to just be using loom bands to secure the camera, and then also the part of the foam strip that I have left over from the original foam pad that I used to hold the flight controller down. So just going to kind of give me an idea where it's going to be positioned. I like to give it roughly 45 degrees angle tilt back. That can be adjusted by where you attach the antenna to the roll bar. That's just going to be tied on there with loom bands. So right now I'm actually just going to be determining the length I want to leave this cable, because I'm going to be directly soldering this. Again, that's where I said, you know, this has one of these like servo plugs on it, which the Cricket cam came with more one of these micro JST style plugs, so that may be preferred for some folks. But in my builds here where I'm soldering it, it's not going to make much difference. So I'm just going to go ahead and snip this off, and a little more soldering here. Alright, now that the camera's connected up to power, I'm going to go ahead and slip the antenna back through the roll bar. And I kind of positioned about where I think it's going to be. I'll go ahead and take loom band and just snip it in two. Just start off by tying one of the sides off here. Just going to take one and come down over everything. That holds the front of the camera down. Then you can just look at the angle and kind of adjust that based on your liking here. I think that looks pretty good. Roughly 45 degrees. Okay, and to wrap up this build, I'm going to go ahead and install some propellers. I have some Gemfan 65mm here. I'm just going to go ahead and press them right onto each motor. And it's always important to make sure that you support the back side of the can when pushing these on so the motor doesn't just push right out. Occasionally I have had loose fitting propellers. This one actually went on kind of easy. So before I fly this, I'm probably going to go ahead and just run a needle through a small drop of super glue and apply a little bit of that to the inside of this propeller and let it dry, and then I'll reinstall it just to make sure that it doesn't slip or fall off in flight, because that one went on, this one right here went on pretty easy. The rest of these seem to be going on reasonable amount of force, and I expect will stay put. Okay, now that the propellers are installed, on all my builds I like to take a little hot glue and add it to the bottom side of each motor where the motor wires exit the can. This just really helps strain relief them and protect them from impact and getting snagged on things. Just go and do this to all four here. Just let that cool off for a minute. Okay, now that the build is pretty well wrapped up here, I'm going to go ahead and get a final weight. Looks like we're just at 37 grams. Pretty good. Just going to discuss some of the batteries I'll be flying with. I have a Nanotech. This is a 600 milliamp hour 1S35 to 70C. This is one of the 400 milliamp hour MyLipos from the Micro Motor Warehouse. These are rather hard to get. Along with a 600 milliamp hour graphene. These are also extremely hard to get. And I have a 300 milliamp hour 45C. I'll just be using this for extremely short and fast flights. And then I'll just go ahead and throw these on the scale. Just get an idea. 9.5 there. Make sure that's not touching. Yeah, about 14.9 on that one. 14.7 on the 480 MyLipo. And on the Nanotech, got about 16.6. Alright, so hopefully in a future video here I can do some FPV flying, show the result of this build. It's pretty light. I also should point out though that you're only running with a 25 milliwatt transmitter, so in the future plan on focusing on some 200 milliwatt builds.